What's up, world? Welcome back to my channel, and this is going to be your MEPS brief.
Check this out.
Just be human. Like I said, today we're going to cover MEPS, which is the Military Entry Processing Station. But as always before that, all the views and opinions expressed within this video are solely those of myself, not the Department of Defense, not the Air Force or any component of the Air Force or the US government. Now with that in place, let's get to it. First off, congratulations, you made it this far. You'd be surprised how many people do not make it this far. So congratulations again on making it to the MEPS step. All right, so the process itself will vary depending on the actual MEPS, the way they do it, the time you're gonna arrive and all of that. So the way I'm gonna cover this is through our MEPS process, which is the Denver MEPS. As in case you didn't know, I am a recruiter for the Colorado Air National Guard. So I will be covering it for the process my candidates would go through if and when they get to go to MEPS. All right, so you're gonna be going to MEPS. What are the first things you need to know? Well, first of all, you need to make sure you're gonna have your driver's license with you, your social security card with you, and your request for examination form. That will basically tell MEPS what you're there for, what type of physical, what type of ASVAB, which by the way, ASVAB is Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, and it's basically the test you take to see what kind of jobs you'd be very good at. You're gonna take those with you. You're gonna head to your hotel. You're gonna drive to your hotel or get dropped off at your hotel. Yes, there is a hotel. And you're gonna have dinner that night. And you're gonna have breakfast the next morning. And then you're gonna either shuttle or drive yourself to the MEPS. It's gonna be super early in the morning, sometime around 4 something, 5 something. Ours is around 5:30 or so that you need to be ready to go. You're gonna line up, you're gonna get brought into MEPS. They're gonna welcome you in there, usually with a welcome brief. Those guard members, and I believe even some reserve members, have a liaison there, and that's who they'll talk to. That will kind of get the process going for them, and then they'll start their MEPS process. But overall, we're just gonna cover the typical day at MEPS, and probably what you should make sure you're wearing and not wearing when you go to MEPS. What to wear? Well, you wanna probably wear some khakis, a polo, a shirt without any kind of crazy graphics on it. Comfortable clothes though. You're not gonna be able to bring your phone. I'd either leave it in the car or they usually have lockers there for you. Maybe bring a book or something. Make sure you're not wearing any perfumes, colognes, jewelry, nothing like that. You don't wanna have any kind of weapons, of course, of any type, whether that's a knife, anything you could think of that. If you have to think about it, just don't bring it, okay? Mainly just bring hygiene items and yourself. That's about all you're gonna need. All right, so the actual process of going through MEPS. Again, you're gonna arrive there, you can get a welcome briefing. After the welcome briefing, they generally have you do your drug tests first, which will include a breathalyzer, a urinalysis, and a blood draw. The blood draw is, of course, looking for other things as well, such as HIV, things like that. They're doing those kinds of tests. And way before you go to MEPS, you've already given permission about all this because it is part of the process. You wanna make sure you're good to go, make sure you're fit for duty, fit to serve in the profession of arms. So you start with the drug tests, then you move on. It could vary. You might end up going to your visual test. That will, of course, be as usual. You have that chart on the wall that you're looking at, right? You're looking at that, it's far away. You're covering one eye, you're covering the other eye, and you're just seeing if you can see what's on there, right? It's testing your vision, distance and otherwise. They may even put you into a machine that will test that as well. Along with that, they're gonna do a color vision test. Very important as well. There's different types of color deficiencies or a total color blindness you could possibly have. And so they'll start with those little dot tests, right? With the hidden images in there, Ishihara, as they like to call them. And so you wanna make sure you're able to see those. And if you cannot, Army and some of the other ones, I believe, will allow you a separate test to determine the level of deficiency you might have. As far as Air Force goes though, if you pass that or fail that, that is the consensus, period. There's no second test to that. Sometimes though, instead of the dots, you might get the different shades of color that you have to organize from one shade into another shade, from like dark to light or light to dark, in the right order, and that's what that test will look like. Along with this, at some point, you're also gonna get a physical check of your eyes. That includes like those gadgets they use where they look up close. They usually dilute your eyes and they'll look up in there, see if there's anything going on or anything like that. If it's needed, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And then another test that you're going to do for vision is a depth perception test. At least you will for the Air Force, because there are some jobs that require it. Usually you put your head against it, you'll see little circles, and you got to pretty much let them know which ones are popping out at you. It's kind of like a 3D kind of thing, which is pretty cool. Next up is your audio test. So you're going to go into a soundproof booth, and you're going to put on a headset, and you're going to have a little clicker. And it's very simple. They're gonna have different beeps at different frequencies. And the idea is if you hear beep, no matter if it's a high frequency, low frequency, whatever it is, you make sure you click it. I start with right, left, whatever side they decide to start on. What do you think is next? Well, you're there for a physical, right? In-depth sports style physical. Luckily nowadays it's a little different. It's not in large groups. They usually do onesie twosies now versus large groups. You will end up having to go into your underwear because they're checking everything, right? All your joints, they're checking all the things you normally do during sports physical that I'm not going to get into in this video, but the usual things, right? Make sure you don't have anything going on with yourself that you might not even be aware of. They're going to check your spine. They're going to make you squat down and do kind of like a duck walk thing is what we like to call it, right? It's a duck walk, is like heel to toe, rotating all your joints, as I said, and just making sure everything's good to go. Everything should already be recorded on what's called your 2807, which is your medical history form. That'll kind of talk about any and all things in your past that you know of that you went to the hospital for or anything like that. And they should be tracking that, and that chief medical officer will meet with you one-on-one. They meet with everybody one-on-one at some point to discuss everything in your medical history, something that might worry them or something they might have questions about or things like that, and check in with you and see how everything is. Now, this all sounds quick, but you're rotating stations, and usually MEPS is pretty busy. There are all the branches and all the different components, and by the components I mean active duty, reserves, and guard, all going through MEPS. So you have to consider that, right? When you're going to MEPS, it's going to be a long day. Anticipate the entire day, because all I covered just now was the medical portion, which can and sometimes will extend past lunch. They'll still give you lunch. Usually it's like a sub and a drink, some chips, and then you continue your medical, or if you're done with the medical portion, you go into the ASVAB, the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. If you happen to take the PICAT, which is an electronic version at home that you can take the entire ASVAB, ensuring, of course, that you took it under the same test conditions, no breaks, no calculator, you took it properly, okay? That's the idea. You get that score, all you have to do at MEPS is do a verification test. That's right, it takes about 30-ish minutes or so. Now, caveat to that, if the scores are dramatically different, that's right, talking like 20, 30-ish points difference, they will generally go ahead and roll you right into the entire full ASVAB again. So then you can estimate an extra 3 to 4 hours at MEPS for your day. So you can anticipate if your day starts around 5:30, you could potentially be out of there by 1. If you're only doing confirmation/verification test, confirmation is another thing, verification is what we're talking about here, verifying those scores. If you're only doing that, maybe 1 o'clock, okay, or 1300 for you military people, all right? So if you are not, though, and you're taking the full ASVAB, you're gonna be there potentially until 4, 5, 6 o'clock, right? So very long day, once again, sometimes later. It used to be a lot longer back when I originally joined. You don't even wanna know. But lucky for you, they've kind of become more efficient with the process. They're not in the business of stopping you from getting through. They're more in the business of just making sure you're qualified. And there's nothing they can do about it. If everything you said was this, and then you go to MEPS and it's actually that, there's nothing they can do. That means you either lied or didn't realize this or whatever it is. And I'm sorry, but there's a medical reg for a reason, because it's the profession of arms. So either you match what we're looking for that, or you don't, right? Because there's going to be a lot of rigorous activity, physical and otherwise, that you're going to do regardless of branch or component that you go into. It is, again, the profession of arms. Okay, so just keep that in mind when you're going through MEPS. Everything there is just to determine if you are good to go. If all goes well and you end up getting through MEPS fully qualified, congratulations, because that is amazing. Otherwise, you might need what's called a Surgeon General waiver, or you might be totally disqualified, and that means you have no chance whatsoever of moving forward. Whatever it is that you have that you didn't realize you have will bar you from enlistment into the military regardless of branch or component. So I'm sorry about that, but that's just how that works. Most of the time though, you either are fully qualified or you need a waiver, and that waiver will get processed. It takes a little bit, it could take a few months, it depends, and that's just that portion. Now, if you're not already fully qualified besides that, as in meaning, I don't know, law violation or drug history before that, and you might need other waivers too. And those are different types of waivers or exceptions to policy. It's a whole nother process, a whole nother video I can get into, but that can also take months. But let's say you're fully qualified. Let's say you get through MEPS. Well, now you have a decision to make, because guess what? MEPS, the physical and academic, is actually only good for 2 years. That means you need to probably enlist, and or let's say you decide to change your mind or you're not sure, you at least have 2 years before that expires. So of course, don't let anybody pressure you into it. If it's not the right time for you right now on your priorities or in your life, that's okay. Yes, we're invested in you. Yes, we took the time with you. Yes, the unit was expecting you, but life happens, okay? And it's okay. Just know that. Don't let people pressure you into things. I had that originally the very first time back in the day. I can get into that in another video. And then I ended up going back a second time. The second time I went back to MEPS, I definitely made sure I let them know, look, I either get what I want or I'm walking, and I ended up getting what I wanted. So it was a different time though. Things have changed a lot. Things have become better, I will say, overall with the process. However, MEPS is still rigorous. It is still strict. There are still medical regulations that none of us have control over. We just have to tell you how it is, and we will, depending on the recruiter, fight for you and fight for a waiver and help you out. But you have to be completely honest with us in the process, okay? Very important. Whoa. Time out. So, job counseling. I want to make sure I cover that before I end this video. Very important part of the MEPS process, different depending on what component you go into, if it's active duty, reserves, guard, okay? If you're going active duty, after you're done with ASVAB and or medical first or last, depending on what the MEPS decides to do first and last, once all that's done, you're going to sit with somebody and you're going to do job counseling. They're going to cover kind of the jobs that are available to you based on everything, needs of that branch of service, based on what you'd like to do, based on all of that, right? And on top of that, you're going to also have your security clearance paperwork. Large portion of the process is doing that. Now, again, that depends on branch. For example, if you are Air Force, you don't really cover that until you go to basic. Other branches though, for example, when I went Army back in the day, we did job counseling, security clearance all at the same time while at MEPS, and then I shipped out pretty shortly after. But those were different times, okay? With us in the Air National Guard, we actually do that for you. You just go to MEPS, you get medically and academically qualified. We pull the list of jobs you qualify for that we have available, and we job counsel you. We cover those jobs with you. We probably give you tours in those work centers, and you get to pick the job, and we secure that job for you. And then after your enlistment, we're gonna do fingerprints and start your security clearance process, so that hopefully by the time you even get to basic, you're good to go. Varies by branch and component, right? So just know that. 3 quick things. 1, there's something called the TAPIS test for the Air Force. And that is something, it's like a behavioral skills test that qualifies you for more jobs within the Air Force. And 2 is something called X Factor, which is also something the Air Force does, where you lift a weight above your head like that, and it's basically on a machine, and that also qualifies you for more jobs. And 3, if you're going in for active duty for any of the branches, you will also be swearing in at MEPS. That's right. So make sure you pre-plan having your family and friends ready, whoever wants to attend. Back in the day when I went by myself, I was all by my lonesome and it wasn't great. So hopefully you consider that. So congratulations again. That's the entire MEPS process. I hope you have a great time at MEPS, or you had a great time at MEPS, depending on when you watch this video, or you have somebody that's just interested in knowing more about MEPS. This is what it's like. And again, the entire process will vary. It's not going to be in the same order, same time, shuttles and all that, and all the things, because every MEPS is going to have a different officer in charge. Every MEPS is going to have a different chief medical officer. They rotate constantly. And different ASVAB and or testing representatives, right? And so their schedule and the way they operate is gonna be totally different depending on which MEPS you go to, okay? But just know in general, that's about the entire process. So good luck out there. take the time to check out my other videos. And if you haven't yet, definitely like, subscribe, comment. I love getting comments from you all. I'll be on there responding to you. Please reach out with any questions and maybe even some ideas for future videos. All right. So I'll see you out there. Good luck.